right, guys, we're going to get started with our panel discussion. So my name is Leslie. I'm the Director of Mecklenburg County Air Quality, and let me just say this is a good-looking group. And it's always interesting for me to be up in front of a room of regulated industry representatives, the EPA, the state, our advisory board members. And so what that means for me is that all of the people that either love me or hate me on any given day because of a decision are all right here in one room. So I'll just say, afterwards, if you love us, come tell Jason. He'll be up here. If you're on the other end of that spectrum, then the line forms over there, and I'll be in the corner, so you can just come and take your shots. No, I really am impressed that you guys chose to spend your morning with us. We really appreciate that. It's our opportunity to really just try to pack the morning full of information that is pertinent, important to as many of you as we can possibly reach. So thank you for that. And it is my pleasure today to introduce to you a panel of our AQC members. We have 4 representatives that agreed to do this today, or I don't know, did they agree? Their arms were twisted, something. Anyway, so what we would like for you to do is understand a little bit about our Air Quality Commission, our AQC, and they are a voluntary advisory board. And rather than reading you their formal mission and purpose and all that, I'll just kind of tell you, and they're going to tell you what they do and what their charge is. But essentially, they advise us as staff, and they advise our Board of County Commissioners on issues related to air quality. And that includes anything from permitting and enforcement cases to the advanced program, to mobile source initiatives, regulatory considerations. So it really runs the spectrum. And so the first thing I'm going to ask these 4 individuals to do is introduce themselves to you. Just tell them who you are, what your real job is, in addition to being on our AQC, and a little bit about what got you interested in volunteering to be on the AQC.
I guess starting with me, since you were looking at me.
Yep,
Terry Lansdell. I've been on the Air Quality Commission now for 6 years. I also wear another public service hat. I'm the Transit Services Advisory Commission co-chair, which handles the day-to-day operations for the Charlotte area transit system. I've been in that service board now off and on for the past decade. It's hard to believe I was a 30-something when I started my public service, but moving on from there. My real job, if you call it that, is work for a nonprofit called Clean Air Carolina. And my role here on the Air Quality Commission comes in the form of a transportation representative. And throughout my public service life and my advocacy life, I overheard a couple of conversations in the hallway. But I ride a bike, a bit more than some, a bit less than others. But I've been across country a few times, and air quality across country and air quality in Mecklenburg County has always been very important to me. And that's really started my impetus to try to support you and support Mecklenburg County.
I'm Fern Paterson. My day job is an attorney. I'm at Parker Poe. I'm an environmental attorney. I got involved with the Air Quality Commission, I think either late 2012 or early 2013. That was right after I had become an attorney. I started off as a chemical engineer. I went to NC State. Also a Cubs fan, so I was always like, there's always 1983 and there's always last year for Cubs, so it'll come around again. We'll just have to wait. So started off doing environmental consulting. I was an air quality consultant in the Chicago area, and I was really focusing on oil and gas and also soybean refining, any kind of refining or pipeline work as an engineer. And then came back to North Carolina and started working for the Division of Environmental and Natural Resources at the time. I was working with Mike, but in a different section. I was in the permitting section in Raleigh and went to law school at night for the last 4 years of that at Central in Durham, and then got the job here. So I've been an attorney here for 3 years or 4 or 5 years. And got involved with Air Quality Commission pretty quickly just because of experience with DENR, now DEQ, interest in air quality and wanting to get involved in sort of the local issues And it's been a really interesting experience to see how a local agency works differently than a state agency.
My name is Jamie Watts, and I am a 24-year chemical engineer, graduate from NC State, another long-suffering Wolfpack fan. I've been in the chemical industry my entire career since graduating. I worked in Texas 4 years. I was in Pennsylvania 10, and I've been back in the state of North Carolina for 10. Probably a lot of you in the audience have more regulatory experience or longer experience than I do, because I really had no involvement with it until the last 7 years of my professional career. But it became one of my job duties, and as I learned more and more about regulations in general, and in particular air regulations, took an interest in air. And when the opportunity came up to volunteer for the Air Quality Commission, I took it, and it's been a great learning experience for me. And I think I've been on the commission about the same amount of time you have, and I've really enjoyed it, and actually volunteered for another 3-year stint, I believe, last year. I don't keep track of when. There's a 3-year assignment, but I don't even remember when the last one ended or when this one started. I'm also a 10-year Army National Guard veteran from Pennsylvania. All my time was in Pennsylvania. So, and you know, I want to say that I appreciate you don't know what it feels like to have a C-130 sitting on the tarmac waiting for you to fly you home. You know, it's a good feeling. I'm convinced once the wheels are up, they do everything they can to make the maximum number of people vomit in the back. But we still appreciate the flight home and or the short flight to Kuwait. That's all.
Let me get my microphone going. My name's Gordon Miller. What's my profession? I am a retired person. I hope all of you aspire to that. It's a wonderful profession to be in. There is an important function on that, and that is something that you contribute to every day, and that's my Social Security check. So thank you very much for that contribution. The reason I'm involved, I've been involved in air pollution for more than 40 years. Actually started full-time on November 1st, 1972. Involved with the activities that are there. I've been at it ever since, along with a number of other things. I've managed lots of waste issues, done Superfund sites. For many years, until just recently, I was a certified industrial hygienist and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm looking at a career from a different perspective. I'm looking back on things. And that's sort of getting into the answer of why I'm involved. I've been involved in Mecklenburg County Air for, I think there's past goal. Let me point. This is what you look like when you are the regulated community and get a chance to retire. Jimmy, if you'll stand up, that's what you look like when you're a regulator. I've known Jimmy for 30 plus years. I guess it's 30, 35 years. We've been trying to do air pollution here in Mecklenburg County for that long, and we've gotten a chance to work at it, look at it, and be successful at it. Where was I? I was in the regulated community, actually for a short period of time. I did teach at a university up in Pennsylvania, one of the competitors to Kelly's university. It was Indiana University of Pennsylvania. But most of the time I've been in the private sector, and including the last, I guess, 14 or 15 years running a consulting firm here in the Charlotte area, and some of you were my clients, so thank you very much for doing that. But one of the things you get into, and this is one of the things I think it's very important, once you retire, you've got to have some stuff to do. If you don't, you just sit there in front of the TV set or the computer. And I made a commitment to myself that I would stay in the profession. Not doing anything, I haven't charged a penny to anybody in years. I'll take your phone calls for free. But I want the community to get better. And I want to keep that. And part of that, and I'm looking at Scott right now, in the town of Matthews, and I represent, I'm a public member, and I represent the town of Matthews, the town of Mid-Hill, and the town of Pineville. Scott's our vice chair for the town of Matthews Environmental Advisory Committee. I have the distinction of chairing that. Is we are continuing to make progress. We are doing things that make things better. And I've been listening to, I always enjoyed Jeff's presentation. Scott, I enjoyed yours. Mike, I enjoyed yours. Because we are making progress. Clean smokestacks, that was an important one for us here in North Carolina. And those kinds of things have made this place a much better place to live. Kelly was pointing on that with her conversation. We do have a better state. I think South Carolina is winning on that too. But we have a better place to live, and I think we can get better yet. And that's an important thing for those of us who have some experience to help out and make happen. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 12 members on the AQC. We strive to keep the AQC positions filled if at all possible. They let you know sort of what constituency they represent on our Air Quality Commission. I did want to let you know of the 12 positions, we have various categories we're trying to fill. One is a health professional, and for the first time in a while, we now have a health professional on our Air Quality Commission. That's traditionally one of the hardest positions to recruit, but we have a pediatric emergency medicine physician out of Levine's Children's Hospital here in Charlotte that serves now, and thanks to Terry and his crew that helped recruit Dr. Levy. So we also have, make sure that we have an engineer, an industrial representative, scientist, environmental, an attorney, transportation, and then 5 sort of general public slots, as Gordon just told you that he fills. So what I'd like for y'all to do now, and you can go in any order you want to, is just describe a function of the Air Quality Commission to give these folks sort of a taste of what your responsibilities are on the commission, what kinds of things you all do. It can be the one you value most, it can be just one you want to talk about, whatever you choose.
I mean, I think that one of the things that having never been on an advisory committee and working with DEQ or DENR in the permitting section, I don't think I fully recognize the long-term planning that goes into any sort of regulatory agency and the local regulatory agency, and that one of our functions is to contribute to that. So we're sort of seeing the reports that you saw from Jeff today, what's happening at the state with regulations, and helping the local agency consider what the implications are in those changes in the ambient air quality and in the regulatory environment, how that impacts our county and how we should respond to that. So we meet every month, and there's a lot of back and forth about that, but I think the long-term planning functions and being able to sort of step back from the day-to-day compliance and enforcement and permitting issues that the agency's dealing with and provide a bigger view and to bring all the different perspectives from Clean Air Carolinas to the regulated industry, to the community, and all the different stakeholders. That's, I think, one of our most important functions and one of the most challenging.
Yeah, to add to that, I would agree that one of the functions we serve is that if you look around the room when we're having our meeting, we do have a tremendous breadth of experience that we bring to the agency to baseline and give them feedback on things they're working on. I mean, I think about the work that the Mobile Sources Group does. I mean, that's something that I was completely oblivious to prior to joining the AQC, and it's really, no offense to anybody, it's any part of the agency, but it's one of the neatest parts of the whole thing is because it's so much of it is based on incentivizing and influencing where there isn't regulation to drive improvements, and it's cutting right to the heart of the biggest compliance problem in the region, and we provide that, I guess that public check, to look at what they're planning and provide input and hopefully in some way help them achieve their goals.
We also provide a support function for the county commissioners and the other groups within the county agencies. One of them, of course, is budget, and you heard, I guess it was Mike, you were talking about getting a consistent thing. We're sort of on a bubble right now on where we're going to be going. What's that future look like? But providing the county commissioners information about what's going on, other agencies within the community. And one of the things that we do is we tend to reach out to the other counties that are surrounding us. Several years ago, we did a relatively large project where we put together some of the issues that we see coming for the area. And that was shared with every county in the area. So not only do we have us represented, Mecklenburg County are helping out, hopefully, with other counties in the area. And this is not to get in the way, Mike, of what's going on at North Carolina DEQ, Division of Air Quality, but it's to support and help as we try and build a better operation. When we think about things, and I mentioned earlier about clean smokestacks, we don't have any smokestack issues in Mecklenburg County, but we have a few that are across the river.
It's been pretty amazing since I came as a transportation representative to see the transition from EGU pollution, energy generation unit pollution, to mobile source pollution and its impact in Mecklenburg County, and everything that we as a board and staff are doing to promote opportunities for clean construction, for grants to replace aging diesel engines, which I think are going to be standout programs moving forward in how we address solutions to pollution across North Carolina and across the region and across the nation. So as an advocate, I'm often challenged about the designation of attainment. While it's great for point source pollution, permits, and those kinds of things, but for me, non-attainment triggered activity for light rail, for replacement of aging buses in our transportation system. It allowed for a different land use for Mecklenburg County to come up with solutions, and that's why I'm so excited about the Ozone Advance program, giving even greater guidance for moving forward and reducing mobile source pollution. For me as an advocate, I like making air visible. While it's not always fun on the spreadsheet, a lot of our programming, a lot of our special events deal with that effort to make air visible, and you're part of that process as well.
Great, thank you. And it may be until you heard this discussion from our panelists that the only time you ever heard about the AQC was if you called to ask about if your permit was ready, when your permit was going to be ready, and you may have been told it's on next month's AQC agenda. So you've probably heard that before. And so one of the functions of this group is once our staff has reviewed your permit application, gone through all the technical review, drafted the permit, and we intend to issue it, it has to go through a public comment period. And we use their meeting to open that public comment period. Does two things. One is if you don't want to pay extra to have it put into the newspaper and you aren't required by regulation to do so, it affords you an opportunity to start that public comment period. For us, what it does is it guarantees that a cross-section of our community is taking a look at the permits that we intend to issue, and they have the opportunity. It's not an approval role for them, but they have the opportunity to give us input into these permits, ask questions, ask for clarifications. They make us better at what we do, which ultimately benefits all of us in the room. And so I hope that now you have an understanding that it's more than just, you know, a line item on an agenda. Their agenda is packed every month with really important projects and considerations for them to give us input on, and also to advise the county commissioners ultimately about. So,
and I want to emphasize
that service.
We do ask questions.
Yeah, they do.
Thank you for submitting those permits, but we want to know too what it's going to be. And I want to go back to a comment that Fern made. We tend to look at it from a much larger perspective. What's going on countywide? And we will ask, you know, who the neighbors are, details about what's going on. So we're taking a look at it from a much larger perspective than you might trying to get your permit. And recognize we want to get your permit as quickly as possible. Boy, I know about that. I had some of those issues come up in my career. But we do ask a lot of questions to make sure that it's generally consistent with how we do stuff in Mecklenburg County, how we want the county to look. And going back to Fern's comment, it's that long-term perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. And so last question, we've got about 5 more minutes. And so the last thing I'd like for you to do is either tell the audience about, briefly about an air quality topic that's important to you right now, and or recommendations you have for our audience about what they can do to continue to help improve our air quality. So.
I'll go first. It's a little project that I'm working on. Scott, you're now involved with. Terry, you were involved with big way. It's called Citizen Science. One of the things that we're doing is helping out with getting more monitoring stuff out. Now, this is not to get in the way of reference methods and the work that, I don't know what's going on with the microphone, but Jeff has a very nice program that's in place. Kelly and God, you guys approved all of that. But how about some stuff that's going on around us? And we now have a monitoring station going on in Matthews, where I live. Thank you for the shelter. EPA provided the shelter for us. Clean Air Carolina has provided the monitoring equipment. So we're making things begin to happen. I would ask that you take a look at doing some of this monitoring, not required under the SO2 regulations, but stuff that makes sense for you and your area and what's happening. Finding out a little bit more about what's going on in your part of the community. And I think very much about Matthews. I've only lived there about 30, I don't know how many years, but I think that's an important place, and I think it's good for me and my neighbors to have that kind of information.
I think I would add to that, and more broadly, that speaks to really community engagement and people understanding the issues, right? And I think that if there's a topic or a place where there's still opportunity, lots of opportunities, is to have more and more of the public aware of what drives pollution in the area they live, the air pollution in the area they live. And, that's part of whatever the next version of the Race to the Beach will be next year. That's part of that is about teaching people about what is driving the biggest pollutant issue that we have, which is ozone.
Drive is a good word to use there.
Yeah, exactly. And there's where there's the most opportunity, and so to answer the other question, it would be whether it's just teaching your neighbors or encouraging your neighbors or your colleagues to participate in that program or another one, something that Mecklenburg County Air Quality is doing or Clean Air Carolina or whomever. It's getting the word out, because the biggest contributor right now is the entire public, right? It's not necessarily the people in this room. You have a part to play, but it's all of us that drive from Ballantyne to Uptown every day. Right.
I mean, I'd say too, the ozone NAAQS compliance is, I think, the most driving issue. And I was thinking about, I don't know if your performance reviews are like my performance reviews, but when I have my performance review, they spend the first half hour talking about all the things I did well and all the things I didn't do well and all the things I can improve on next year. And at the very, very end, they tell me what my compensation or bonus is going to be, because if they told me that at the beginning, I wouldn't pay any attention to anything else that they said. I'm really there just to figure out what's going to happen with my compensation. In the Air Quality Committee meetings during the summer months, which is when the ozone is really high, we end with what that month of monitoring has showed. And this year, I mean, the standard is 70 parts per billion. And every time you have we're looking at the highest levels. So you would want to see what were the highest monitored levels from that prior month, and what did that do to our design value? And were we going to make it this year? Were we going to meet the standard? And we did by like a hair. And I think it really emphasizes, and particularly the mobile sources, where are contributing so much to NOx, and the agency's ability to influence that is limited. It really is incentives. It has to be really creative. They have to communicate that. And if you look at that, where we landed, I mean, that really could have been the deciding factor. It very well may have been. I mean, trying to get the off-road mobile fleet modernized and emitting less, trying to get people to drive less in the summer months. And I would emphasize to you and to your community that doing things like, I have a little pickup truck that I love to drive and it gets terrible gas mileage. I'm not going to drive it on warning days for ozone. I'm just not going to do it. If I can avoid mowing my lawn on that day, it seems silly, but it makes a big difference, particularly based on the really tight margin that we're on right now, that those little things, particularly in summer months and sunny days, make a difference. And it's the advanced programs and it's the mobile source programs that are really influencing that. So I'd emphasize that.
There's not much left for me to talk about, but it's just for me, I think that the thing that's most amazing to me is that we make generational decisions quite often, and we don't really realize it. The 1 part per billion that Fern was referring to, if we didn't have the AeroGrade program, now 3 years ago, that alone may have made a direct impact in this year's ability to reach that 1 part per billion low enough to keep us out of non-attainment this year. So the decisions that we're making, the actions that we're doing, when we look at your permits, when we look at our county as a whole, we're making those generational decisions about how the next year, the next 2 years, the next 10 years worth of air and production of air pollution in our county is going to be. That's been the amazing part for me on the commission, and the thing that I admire everybody who works on staff at state, local, federal level really are doing to try to make these generational decisions on behalf of our health, on behalf of the environment, and on behalf of our economy. And they all three have to work together, and they're doing so incredibly well here in Mecklenburg County.